Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. Those of you who are live and those of you who are watching on the recording, welcome. This session is aimed at getting you through the SBR exam. And, here we are just a few days after the September results. And I'm thinking that some of you will have passed another exam or come off the conveyor belt of degree, and you're thinking about doing SBR. And this session is very specifically orientated towards those of you who want to pass SBR first time. If you're a research student, to be honest, that's another conversation. If you're a research student, reach out to me. If you're a research student, then maybe it's December that it's appropriate, and there's a whole different set of tactics and courses and approaches. But I'm assuming that you're listening tonight because you're an SBR virgin, that you're wanting to pass SBR for the first time. And to be absolutely brutal, it's just kind of too late for you to start from scratch and expect to pass the exam in December. So I'm very much thinking about March. The exam in March is on the 4th. The exam in March, so March is out for doing any work. It's just the last few days. February is a short month, and we've got to bear in mind we've got this Christmas and New Year stuff, and that may disrupt our rhythm, that may disrupt our studies. So I hope you're in the right place, and welcome to this session. I want to talk about various things, but I also want to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions, and we'll do that at the end. There'll be a very open and random kind of, questions coming from you towards the end. But the first thing I want to do is to do some introductions. I then also want to talk about the exam, of course, because everything is about the exam, and then talk about resources. And some of the resources I can charge you for. Some of those resources are effectively free. So let's crack on and deal with the introductions. So the first thing to say is that I am an ACCA member. I did these exams, and I did these exams when I was working. Now, that was a long time ago, obviously before the internet, and I did pen and paper exams. You're doing computer-based exams. But I do remember the stress. I do remember the juggle of working and studying at the same time. So I have been there, is what I'm trying to say. I did these exams. When I qualified, I was working for KPMG. I was in their bankruptcy. I dealt with George Best. His file sort of came across my desk, but that's another story. But actually, KPMG was not for me. Practice was not for me. Yeah, maybe my bank balance would have been slightly better if I had stuck with it, become a partner at KPMG, because boy, do they earn good money. But I found my vocation in teaching. And I started out with Emil Wolf, and then we became FTC, and then we became Kaplan. And that was a wonderful time because it gave me an opportunity to teach throughout the world. I taught in the West Indies, I taught in Pakistan, I taught in India, China, Hong Kong, right the way across the world. Sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, had a great time. But all good things come to an end. I left Kaplan. I went to work and live in Singapore. I have spent my career teaching ACCA. I have spent my career teaching IFRS. When I came back from Singapore a few years ago, I wanted to do my own thing. And I had the opportunity because of the internet. I had the opportunity because of disintermediation to write and deliver and curate my own course, where I put this individual student front and center, where I'm able to mark and support students as individuals, not just turn up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning shout for 6 or 7 hours, and run away again. Done that, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Right? This is different. What I do now is different. I'm helping individuals. Right? I'm marking their work. Ironically, although we don't meet face to face, it's more engaging. There's more questions. There's more support. Yeah, not all learning takes place inside the classroom, and I'm there through WhatsApp 24/7. I'm marking your work. I'm giving you support. So this is what I do. I help students pass SBR. That is all I do. I don't teach other papers. Don't teach SEMA. I am ACCA. I teach ACCA. That is what it is all about. Well, I say that's what it's all about. I'm also married, and that is a picture of my lovely wife, Jen. So I thought I would throw that in there. But look, I've introduced myself, and what I would like to do actually is for you to be able to introduce yourself. And maybe the easiest way or the most efficient way is to ask you to do a poll. Now, these are totally anonymous. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious as to who we've got in the room today and where they're at. All right. So I can share the aggregate results and we can briefly reflect on those results. But this is an anonymous poll just for this purpose. Yeah. And I'm curious if you could answer the 3 questions. Basically, a little bit about your background in terms of your academic track record and where you are and the sort of situation you're in. So let me leave that with you for 30 seconds, well, 10 seconds. It's not taxing. It's not meant to be a difficult series of questions. It's just your first reaction. So 5, I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think everybody has answered who is going to answer. We've got an overall 90% engagement, so that is good. Right, so who is in the room tonight? Most of you were exempt from FR, right? And this is typical. This is typical. And I find that some students who are coming through from a degree route who've been exempt from FR sometimes don't quite know what they've missed. I've done some teaching at my local university, and I know that there are some areas we used to go in great depth and other areas were total self-study. And there is an overlap between FR and SBR. I respect that. I understand that. I have designed my course to help you pass SBR. And if that means teaching you stuff that you should have done at FR, I will teach you that stuff. I have no shame or embarrassment about saying you must know the basics of provisions. You must know the basics of impairment. And I will teach you that again, even though you've done that at FR before, because if you want to pass this exam, you want 50 marks. So you may as well get the 50 easiest marks. And there is no point in me trying to teach you the most sophisticated reversal of impairment losses, goodwill, cash generating units, all that rubbish, if you don't understand the basics. In order to understand the complexities, you have to make sure you understand the basics. So I invest the time to make sure that you're not missing out. I do not say, I'm just going to teach you the difficult bit, home study, you do this bit that you should know already. I do not do that. All right? Because one of the joys of internet learning is its flexibility and able to be comprehensive. All right? So if you've passed FR, fantastic. You might find some of this course you cut through like butter. Or you might have only passed FR with 55% and never really understood cash flow, never really understood groups. And so that's really going to be useful for you that I go over the basics. Or you may have passed FR 2 years ago and forgotten it, you know? be a bit rusty on it. Don't worry, I am here to build the basics up. For the majority of you, SBR is your first strategic professional exam. All right. If you're one of the 43% that have already passed one of the exams as strategic professional, fantastic. You know what it takes. These exams are challenging. Well, maybe not strategic business leader. Maybe that's a bit of bullshit. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that, should I really? But that's a different challenge. It's a different game, totally different game. SBR, a little bit like advanced tax. There's some technical stuff that you must know, as well as some judgment, as well as some numbers. It's a right mix. There's something for everybody in SBR. But if you've already passed an exam at the strategic professional level, well done. You know what it takes. If this is your first exam, it is different from university. More time pressured, more all or nothing. There's no sort of coursework involved. I haven't written the exam, so I can't kind of tell you the inside track. It's brutal, brutal. You've got to cover the syllabus, all right? And it's a step up from skills. You know, skills, multiple choice, skills, few numbers. This is about explaining, demonstrating your understanding. Vast majority of you are working full time, so time is precious. One of the advantages of online learning is it's flexible. This is a live session. My courses are generally based around videos, interactive videos. I'll show you some in a minute. So that you've got the opportunity of logging in at 6 in the morning, logging in at 6 at night, working at the weekends, whatever it takes. Yeah. Most of you are self-financing. Interesting. Not everybody is self-financing. If you're sponsored by an employer, I can invoice your employer. That's great. And of course, you want to pass SBR first time. I put that in hoping to get 100% response. So there's a couple of you there who say you don't want to pass SBR first time, which I find confusing. Maybe you've already passed SBR, I don't know, and you're here just for the ride. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. Right. So let me stop sharing that. Let me close that down. And we have introduced ourselves to each other. And what we really want to do is to talk about the examination itself. That's a bit of a dodgy shirt. Now, if we're going to talk about the exam itself, I wonder what you see in this situation. What are you looking at there? Whoops, I'm too far. Ah, Michelle, you've got double vision. If you look to the right, it's the wrong way around. If you look to the right, if I look to my right, I'm seeing a rabbit, but if I look to my left, I'm seeing it's a duck. And some of you can see both sides. I hope you can now. I suppose I use this because there's no right answer. If you're doing a multiple choice exam, there has to be one right answer. If you're doing an accounts preparation question, there has to be the right number. SBR is not like that. SBR is judgment. SBR is words. SBR is explaining. That's why it's expert marked. That's why it is expert marked. That's why I need to see your work as you progress through the course. And I certainly need to see you do mock exams to give you constructive feedback on time pressured, blind mock exams. The exam is compulsory. There's no choice. It's 100 marks. You get just over 3 hours to do it. Everybody says it's time pressured. The first question is on groups, consolidations. I will teach you this from scratch. It's not about the 5 workings, and it's not about preparing the group accounts. At this level, it's assumed the group accounts have already been prepared by your assistant, by the computer, and what you're doing is you're doing a fiddle. What you're doing is you're doing a correction. Yeah, somebody's not dealt with the pension problem or changes in accounting policy problem. And so you've got the group accounts already prepared in a pre-populated spreadsheet. Could be a P&L, could be a balance sheet, could be a cash flow. And there's something wrong with those accounts. They're given to you complete. You do not prepare group accounts. You amend, you tweak, and you explain what you're doing. So if they say, oh, we haven't done the impairment review on goodwill, you explain that it's a cash generating unit. You articulate about the non-controlling interest, how that is measured and whether or not that affects the NCI. Then you calculate the impairment loss and then you slot in the adjustments into the accounts. So it's partly numerical, but it's always discursive and explaining. You are not a computer. You're more than a calculator. You're somebody who needs to be able to communicate and be technically proficient. Question 1 is on groups. I start my courses, well, strictly speaking, I start my courses looking at framework, looking at the conceptual framework, but we deal with groups fairly early on. Yeah, it's the beginning bit there really, because I want you to get off to a good start in the exam. Question 2 is on ethics. There are 5 pillars, but you're not asked about the pillars. You're given an ethical dilemma. You're told that your boss is a bully. You're told that your boss is having an affair with a junior member of staff. You're told that your boss is not switching, leaving their computer turned on overnight, and therefore sensitive data is available, and now everybody knows what everyone else is paid, and customer data is leaked on the internet. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Yeah, you're told that you're asked to prepare the accounts, but you're told to do a false accounting treatment, an accounting treatment that you disagree with. You know, you think a provision should be made, and they said no, don't make a provision. You think a disclosure should be made, and you're saying no, don't make a disclosure. And so you're given an ethical dilemma, and you have to write. And you have to explain why it's an ethical dilemma, how you're going to solve it. Of course, it's a cartoon. Yeah, you're under a real time pressure. So there's a rhythm and a routine and a structure that I can teach you as to how to answer these types of questions. I kind of like these questions. They're a bit waffly. They're less technical than some. Yeah, because you kind of know going into the question that someone's a bit of a crook, someone's a bit of an idiot, someone's incompetent. And so you're looking out for things. You can be pre-prepared. But you are not just writing out a pre-prepared answer. You are having genuinely to read, think, and apply. Although I say question 3 is about standards, the whole exam is about standards. Accounting standards comes in question 1, in question 2, in question 3, and in question 4. What you will never be asked is, what's the definition of impairment? What you will never be asked is, what is a contingent asset? What you will never be asked is, what's the definition of a provision? Instead, you'll get a scenario where potentially your factory has had a fire. And because of the fire, that fire spread onto a neighboring property, causing them damage. And you've got an insurance claim that you can make about your property, but maybe not the neighboring property. So you've then got to explain the accounting consequences of that. And that's partly identifying that the asset has been destroyed, or the asset has been damaged, I should say. So that's an impairment review. That we have got to explore whether we should make a provision for a contingent liability, a provision for a liability in respect to the damages being claimed from us from our neighbour, and whether or not we've got a contingent asset. So it is all about the application. Apples, 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 apples. You've got to give the marker something to write about. So yes, you do need to know some definitions, but it's not really an exam where you are regurgitating. It's about your understanding and ability to apply. Now, question 4 is similar in its nature. It has a little twist, though, to it these days. It's going forward. And the twist is that you're looking at it from a perspective of an investor. You are directly answering and helping somebody to better understand the financial statements. I don't mean current ratios. I mean explaining the, the cash flow implications of impairment, or the deferred tax implications of a share-based payment. So integrated, like standards are, but does this affect my earnings per share? I'm a shareholder. Yeah, you've revalued a property, you've impaired a revalued property, you've created a deferred tax on that adjustment. Does that affect my earnings per share? Does that affect the cash flow and my ability to receive a dividend? So it's another way of thinking about stuff. But you've got to know the stuff, but you've got to understand the stuff first. We'll see questions in the course, something I deal with at the end. It's something that I think really comes to life when we do revision, because then everything is pulled together. APM stands for Alternative Performance Measures. Some of you may know EBITDA. Does anybody know what EBITDA stands for? Does anybody want to use the meeting chat to tell me what EBITDA stands for? Yes, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, earnings before interest and tax. Absolutely. Yeah, earnings before interest, tax, amortization. Yeah, a little bit of a dodgy shorthand. It's an unregulated measure. So it's not something which is specifically defined by IFRS. Michelle and Lorna came up with slightly different definitions, you see. And therein lies the rub of comparability. We want information to be useful. One of the enhancing characteristics of useful information is that you've got something which is comparable and consistent. But anyway, let's move on. That's very much about the exam. Let me sort of interrupt this conversation with a little bit of an advert, with a little bit of a direct plug for my Platinum course. So as I said, I'm assuming that you are wanting to pass SBR first time. And I'm assuming that you understand it's appropriate for you to sit this exam in March. The tuition phase of my course is up and running now. And during that tuition phase of the course, there are assignments that I will take in for marking to give you feedback so you can monitor your progress. You get full WhatsApp support as well. because you're doing the exam in March, February becomes the month of revision. And in February, you'll be doing 2 mocks as well as some other assignments earlier on. All right. So it gets intensive in February. There are deadlines in February. But you only get the benefit, the full benefit of revision if you are revising. In other words, if you've covered the ground. You do not need to be a perfectionist. You do not have to have 100% perfect technical knowledge. Breadth rather than depth. We cover the ground, we understand the principles, then we can revise. We're always going to be learning, right? A big, big part of my course, my USP, if you like, is me and marking. The quality of my material and the quality of my marking. How do you know whether you... I did a reset thing on earlier tonight, and I said, you know, why did you fail? You know, was it reason A, was it reason B, or just don't you know why you failed? And I was so depressed because about a third of the students responded that they had no idea why they'd failed the exam. And I thought, well, God, I just thought, well, no one's seen their work. No one's told them, actually, you know, you're good at this, you're not so good at this, and this is how you're going to get better. On the left is the student answer. On the right is the feedback. It's as long and as detailed as the answer you provide sometimes. Yeah. So on my Platinum course, you get not just marking, but you get feedback. Of course, you get technical support. It's video-based, so it is ultimately flexible. And those videos are interactive, as I'm hopefully about to show you. There are payment plans. Most of you are self-financing. And if you're self-financing, then you can spread the payments over 3 months. If your employer's picking up the bill, then I can invoice your employer, or you can pay in full and reclaim back from your employer straight away. It's very easy to register. It's very easy to register. All right. My WhatsApp number is all over the place. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah. Very easy to register. You can find me very easily. My surname is Clendon. And I'm with FME. That's my platform. We're Platinum provided, approved by ACCA for these courses. So you can see there this logo, which ACCA is very precious about, quite rightly so. We've worked very hard to comply with all of the criteria. So we are Platinum. What I thought I'd do is show you a little bit of the course. All right, so I thought I'd show you a little bit of the course. So this is the tuition element. There is a separate part of the course for revision, which is February. And that has the mock exams and the revision material and the revision notes and the revision. That's another whole separate bit. This is what you gain immediate access to. So you can see that I've broken the course down basically into 10 units. All right. Now that introduction does include, both an introduction to the framework and an introduction to groups. All right. Sorry. Whoops. Sorry. March tuition. Right. So there is an introduction. There's content in the introduction. That's what I want to say. So I don't know. Let's have a look at accounting standards. All right. So within each section, it's broken down again, sometimes into 3, sometimes into 4. And accounting standards A breaks it down into 4 separate parts. So we have video lecture on revenue. Yeah, we've got the notes. Yeah, we've got the articles. Yeah, and then we've got one on leases. And again, there's an hour lecture on leases. And one of the things about leases is the homework for marking. So there's something to be submitted here, so on and so forth. Well, if we look at the revenue lecture, if we look at the revenue lecture, can you hear me? Can you hear the lecture? Just jumping it forward. I apologize. It appears that you can't hear the video. You can't hear my voice when I'm talking about the video. So you can hear me, but you can't hear the video. Is that right? My apologies for that. The video is a little bit interactive in that it will, from time to time, force you to engage with questions and force you to stop. Yeah. So, you know, that's an example. I apologize that I can't get the audio coming through. I think I know what I did wrong at the beginning. There we are, share sound. If I go back, I can therefore, you can begin to hear me. Should you want to just put, you know the sound of my own voice by now.
So what are these 5 steps? Well, there are the first 4. You identify that you've got a contract. You look at what you're supposed to do. You look at how much you're going to be paid, and then you allocate that out. Now, those first 4 steps can occur immediately you have a contract, because as soon as you have a contract, you know what you're supposed to do. You know how much you're being paid. And then the 5th point, understand that.
And I teach through examples. So
benefit, because if it's not probable, it's not a sale. It's not a sale from a, and interest rates are 10%. So we're not going to get any cash today. What is going to happen is we're going to deliver the goods today. We're going to fulfill.
So from a pedagogical point of view, I've tried to design my videos so they are basically, 1 hour. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter, but I don't have the time pressure of everybody having to sort of leave the classroom at 9 o'clock. So that takes a little bit of pressure off from my perspective. So I teach what I want to teach, so I can cover the ground properly. It also enables me to, you sometimes will take longer than an hour to cover an hour video because you can pause it and you can work the questions ahead of me and with me. It is possible to speed up the video, so if you wanted to listen to me talking a little bit quicker, you could talk a little bit quicker. You know, it's possible with a video to do that. And obviously if the phone goes or you want to go make a cup of tea, you've got that flexibility as well. So the course is well received and does help people pass this examination. That's what I do. As I said earlier, that is what I do. Yeah, I'm helping you pass your examination. SBR. The only thing I do is SBR. All right. So you know that you're dealing with a subject specialist. That's my WhatsApp number. Please feel free. If you want to WhatsApp me, I can send you resources. Yeah. I mean, one of the resources that is out there is a free sample of my lectures. So you don't have to enroll on the course to have a little bit of a play and understanding of it. You can access that. You can either use your phone now to QR code it, or again, I repeat, you can just WhatsApp me and I will send you the link direct. Other resources out there include Spotify. I do an award-winning podcast on Spotify, but it's also on Apple, it's also on Google, and these are 10 minutes long. So quick bursts of information, and there's a whole back catalogue of them. I need to add a few more, but something like 30 of them, so you can get a feel for my teaching style. You probably know I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn most days. I think today I was posting a picture of a chocolate cake, so hardly dramatically educational, but it was celebrating success. Somebody had, one of my students had kindly sent me a chocolate cake out of gratitude, so I would share that. And of course, you can find me on YouTube as well. So, you know, I do put a certain amount of stuff out there for no charge. I like to give back a little bit. But if you want to come on my courses, get my marking and get my pass assurance, yeah, you want to nail it, then you know what to do. I'm out here. I'm here to support you. So I've now been talking for nearly half an hour, and now is the time for me to potentially do a little bit of listening and for me to answer any questions that you have about SBR, any questions that you have about SBR. Tarek, yeah, can you please cover the common reasons why students fail SBR? Yes, good question. Some students don't do enough work. So some students don't realize how much work there is to do, don't realize the full breadth of the syllabus, and they walk into the exam and they just don't know enough. Now, to be honest, I think that's a minority. Certainly, very few of my students will fall into that trap because it's very clear that the ground that you've got to cover. So one reason is a lack of knowledge. Second reason is a lack of being smart. Now, what do I mean by that? I suppose I mean exam technique. I suppose I mean the difference between rote learning and understanding. The difference between thinking you know what the answer is and actually having somebody critique your answer and give you constructive, positive feedback on what's good about your answer. This may be a surprise to some of you, but I know won't be a surprise to others of you. The examiner's answers are awful, in the sense that you cannot replicate the examiner's answers. It's not a question of looking at the examiner's answers, learning the examiner's answers, and then you can pass the exam. That is just a totally and utterly unrealistic expectation. And sadly, I think some self-studying students fall into that trap. They go into the exam and they realize that it's a different question, and they realize they can't produce an answer of anything like the examiners, and they don't know what to do. I will teach you how to produce an answer, yeah, how to apply your knowledge. I'll teach you the knowledge and how to apply the knowledge. And that way, you'll have the knowledge and you have the exam technique. Does that answer your question, Tarek? I hope it does. Zahara, hi. How many hours of study would you recommend for those who work full time? I normally do 1 or 2 hours of work, but I think that's enough. Yeah. I think you have to study little and often. I think you have to have a plan. I am not a fan of an 8-hour stretch. I think you're much more effective working an hour or two every day, every other day, so you plug it through. I'm slightly loath to put an absolute definitive number of hours on it, because different people have slightly different learning styles. And the video, you can pause the video, you can fast forward, the notes that go with the video and the homework, they're reading. But you've got, like, I've broken it down into 10. Each one of 10 has probably got 3 or 4. So there's probably 30, 40 hours of videos there. But in addition to that, there's notes, there's homework to be done, there's assignments to be done, and that's just the tuition phase. All right. So it is doable. The sooner you start, the easier it becomes. You can start next week, you can start next month, but if you get ill for a week, it's a month end, best friend's 30th birthday, whatever, pushes it back a little bit. So Zahara and Sally, you are both effectively asking the same question. I haven't directly answered your question. I'm trying to be honest. Different people have different learning styles, and online learning facilitates that, because you can repeat, you can study when you want to study. The material is there. Once you understand it, you move on. I hope that answers your question, Sally. I hope that answers your question, Zahara. Hazel asks, should you take the UK or international? My short answer to that question is international. It's easier. There's less to study. If you do the UK, you've got 5%, 10% more to study. It's harder. But you might want to do the UK, and if you do want to do the UK, I will support you. And the reason you might want to do the UK or Irish variant is because you want a practicing certificate, you want to be an audit partner. Yeah, and if that's what you want, I will support you. It's just a bit harder. And if that's what you want to do, the UK variant, you also have to do AAA, and you have to do the AAA variant. Michelle says, do you advise completing the ethics and professional skills module before attempting strategic exams? Doesn't give you a disadvantage if you've done it. I don't think it gives you a massive advantage for strategic business reporting. It would do for strategic business leader. Ethics and professional skills module is something you need to get out of the way at some stage. Sometimes people do it after whilst they're waiting on results, in that kind of lull period. So yeah, I'm going to be lukewarm. There's no harm in doing it, but you don't have to do it for SBR. I hope that helps. How many questions do you suggest is enough to practice per week? Built into my course are questions. Built into my lectures are questions. After the lecture, there's homework questions. And then there's questions I take in for marking. So there's lots of material built in. I love the question because it acknowledges from the off that to pass strategic business reporting, it's not about how much you know, it's how much you can apply. It's not about how much you have absorbed and can regurgitate and memorize. It's the output. It's an output process, not an input process. Well, I do need to make sure that you understand the stuff. So that's why we have a tuition phase, and built into the tuition phase is homework. Built into the tuition phase is me marking your work. Rafaela, I hope that answers the question. What is the deadline for registering for the Platinum course for March? Okay, good question, Tarek. What's the deadline for registering for the course? There are two good times to plant a tree. 20 years ago or today. There are two good times to invest in your pension: 20 years ago or today. Now, the same doesn't quite apply to the deadline date for the platinum course. There is a deadline. There is a deadline. I close the course. March is the exam. February is revision. March is the exam. February is a revision. January and December, you need January and December to do tuition, and it's tight. I actually close my course the end of November. Students are on it now. Students are working through it now. Now is a good time to start. Yeah, get a head start. But if you enroll in December, it's too late. I'm talking to you about June, right? So November, the end of November is the deadline, right? The end of November is the deadline. But as soon as you enroll, you get full access to the tuition phase of the course. And then you set your own pace. You run your own race. So if you have a wedding coming up, if you have a month end coming up, you can plan your studies around it. The later you leave it, you've got no wriggle room. I do allow people to defer once, but if you set your heart on doing the exam in March, let's do it in March. Let's do it properly. As I said in the beginning of my lecture, in the beginning of this session, let's pass first time. Yeah, let's pass first time. Tarek, does that answer your question? Yeah, I do, payment by installments. I think I've said that. This is beginning to be a little bit more of an advert, but I'm happy to take any questions on anything to do with SBR. Let me leave it 30 seconds. And if I don't get any further questions in the next 30 seconds, I will be bidding everybody a fond farewell. So it's a big commitment to doing this exam. I think the biggest commitment is your time rather than your money. Favor, wow, you passed FR with 76. Is it safe to write SBR in December? Not on my course. My December course is closed. You can sign up for my revision course, but that you haven't covered the SBR course. You've got a very strong foundation. And Favor, if you're very hardworking and very lucky, you just might do it with a mark of 76, having just passed it. That's exceptional, though. It's not what I would. It's not what I would recommend. I don't recommend doing December from a standing start. Thank you, Michelle. Any further questions or queries, please? You may not want to share them on the chat, but you know where I am. You know where to find me. I'm a real person. Yeah, and you've got my WhatsApp number, +44, drop the O if you're not in the UK. Thank you, Sally. I hope I can help you pass. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Rafaela. Thank you, Favor. Well done on getting 76 for FR. That's impressive. Thank you, Renita. Right. Let's go and have something to eat. Thank you very much, everybody.